So as I said at the beginning of the show, we have a guest, and we have guests in studio. We have Congressman Ron Wright right here with us in the studio. Hello, sir.
Hello, thank you for having me.
I'm so glad that you're here. It's great to see you. I was going to make a bow tie joke, but I didn't think of one. But I like it. You're the bow tie guy.
Well, it takes a bold man to wear one.
That's right. That's a true story. Okay, well.
I would like, when we get to it, I would like to comment on your last segment.
I'll just tell our listeners briefly, Congressman Ron Wright, he's here in studio because he does actually represent a district in Texas. Not my congressman. I would like him as my congressman. I have a Democrat. But Ron Wright represents CD6, Congressional District 6, at his very first term in Congress. He was elected in 2018, started out in January 2019, and I could do your other history, but I'd rather hear what you think about my first five.
Well, on the Roger Stone circus, let me just make 2 points. One is, if you compare that sentence that they recommended, that those four recommended, to things like rape, assault, theft, it's way out of whack. And to people who don't know what normal sentencing is, you do, any sane person that knows about sentencing would know that that was way over the top. The other thing is this: if the Democrats dare go down this impeachment road again, and their failure to remove Donald Trump from office has doomed them in November. If they try to do this again in an election year, even if it's Attorney General Barr, it will destroy the modern Democratic Party as we know it.
Okay, we live in hope for that result. But I do agree with you. I think that, and I don't ever really feel sorry for Nancy Pelosi, but I will say she knew this was a bad idea, the impeachment to start with.
Oh, absolutely.
But she got arm twisted by the squad, by the radical element, which is most of her party, and she, I guess, couldn't stand the pressure anymore. At this point, I don't know if she thinks she's got to, if she can figure out, got to stop it again, or is she just going to let them barrel through and do it again? What do you think?
My prediction is she is captive of the left in her party, the radicals. That we know what they want to do with their party. We know what they want to do to the country. She knows it's terrible for their party, but I think she's powerless to stop it because she doesn't have the votes to stop it in her own caucus.
That's amazing. And it's funny, when the squad who joined Congress the same year as you came along, Nancy Pelosi tried to kind of isolate them. They're kind of extreme. They're not really the Democrats of today, but they seem to be like they're running the place.
Well, what they discovered, and what the leadership of the Democratic Party in the House discovered, is the squad doesn't need them. They don't need the Speaker. They don't need Steny Hoyer, because they have their own following. AOC sends out a tweet. She's got millions of people following her. So she doesn't need the leadership of the House they don't need them to get their message across, to get some of these crazy ideas, actually into some of the laws they're trying to pass.
Okay, so I did want to start with the impeachment, and then I want to go back to State of the Union, and then I get 3 or 4 bills you're working on. But on the impeachment, at least from your sitting home in Texas, watching in television, it seems like Congress is so divided and there's such acrimony. But behind the scenes, when you're just working every day, is there a lot of tension still between Republicans and Democrats in the House?
There is, and it's unfortunate because the first 6 months of 2019, there were people on both sides of goodwill who wanted to work together to get some things done, including me. I'm one of the most conservative members of the Texas delegation. I've worked with David Trone on a Pell Grant reform bill, with McAdams on the Finish Act that would help higher education keep kids in college. I've had 2 foreign affairs bills actually pass out of the House that were bipartisan, of course, because that's the only way you can get anything passed out of the House. But once this impeachment, once we got back from the August break, it turned ugly, very ugly. And I'm on the Foreign Affairs Committee, so I was one of the 3 committees that was doing the investigation in the Star Chamber with Adam Schiff, so I got to go in there. And what happened in there was a total travesty of justice, to the point where Schiff would instruct a witness, when questioned by a Republican, don't answer that question. It was a total travesty. There was never a reason to have it in a SCIF, because nothing of...
Say what SCIF is again. What SCIF is?
It's a secured room.
Compartment.
Right, where you have to leave your phones outside and all this stuff so that nothing can be... it would be a violation of ethics if one of us had said anything about what happened inside the SCIF, and yet Schiff and his staff, they were leaking what they wanted to leak to the press every day.
Yep.
I was part of storming the SCIF. A lot of people made fun of that at the time, but guess what happened? They went public after that.
You embarrassed them.
Absolutely.
Good, rightly. Yeah.
Absolutely. We controlled the room for 5 hours. We basically controlled the news, the news messaging for that 5 hours. So they did not want a repeat of that. And what it demonstrated to the American people was what a travesty it was, what a sham it was. Why are you doing this in secret? There was no reason to, and so they had to go public after that.
Well, it's to build their record. They thought they would dig out everything they can to get the president and make sure everything they don't want public, somehow they can figure out ahead of time how to keep it up.
But the impeachment really poisoned the well in terms of our ability to work together. There is an animosity, an anger on the floor that is palpable at times, and it's preventing Congress from actually addressing the needs of the country and solving problems. If you look at what what defines this Congress in the House more than anything else is the simple truth that last year they issued more subpoenas than they passed laws.
That's a great stat to know, more subpoenas than laws.
And that's an absolute fact.
All right. So it is just as acrimonious behind the scenes as it looks, or toxic as it looks.
Yes.
Yeah. It's really a shame. And actually, I didn't even read all the comments, but there are people in the House still hinting at maybe we'll find some other reason. And in fact, this very example we were talking about in the first five, this idea that President Trump weighed in on the egregious sentencing, the original sentencing instruction on Roger Stone, that some people will spin as another obstruction. You see, the president, he's interfering with the functioning of the Department of Justice.
They forget, and they want to fool the American people into believing that the Justice Department is somehow not part of the executive branch, but it is. They report to the president.
Right. And it's also, they have this notion, or the left tries to paint, that they are just immune from criticism, that these are the high and mighty Department of Justice, these are lawyers, they're ethical, how dare you question their motives?
Well, I think we saw with the FBI and the FISA disaster just, how human they really are.
Yep, we sure did. Okay, so I swear we're going to get to talking about bills and substantive legislation, but it's so great to have you here. So I also want to talk about at the State of the Union. So this was your second one you just saw in January.
Yes. That was such a disgrace. And if people you didn't see them often on camera, but if there had been a camera focused on the Democrat side, their behavior was the most childish, most juvenile I've ever seen from a group of adults. All from catcalling the president to there was a gentleman up in the gallery that was a guest of Nancy Pelosi's who was saying some very vicious and horrible, vile things, yelling at, and so the Capitol Police had to escort him out, and when they did, Democrats rose up and applauded him. It was just insane. And then you saw how it ended with Nancy Pelosi shredding a copy of the speech. That was just disgraceful.
It was disgraceful, but you're right. You could not tell, watching on television, you could not see this person, and everyone in there, I assume, is a guest of some member of the House or Senate.
Right.
So this was a Nancy Pelosi guest yelling at the president during the State of the Union.
To the point where he had to be escorted out of the room by the Capitol Police, and they applauded him.
Wow. The ladies in white applauded him?
Right.
Man. Okay, well, everything else is so dull after this. No, I mean, no, I'm so grateful to get a picture of what's happening inside. I do want to hit two quick bills. There was one bill that I read about. This is HR 2474, and I think we were the Pro-Union Bosses Act. I mean, that was what the Republicans were referring to as. But in essence, can you describe what the Democrat majority, even though, to be clear, the majority in the House, if it's really pro-union and pro-Democrats, not going to make it through the Senate. So it's just a message kind of bill to pass.
What they've been doing since the beginning of this Congress, I'm on the Education and Labor Committee. And so this bill, along with all the labor bills, went through the committee. And there's been more of that than there has been education bills in terms of hearings and things. And what this bill does, it's just a checklist that they're going down to please the unions in the country, knowing it's going to go nowhere after it passes the House. And you're right, it's a messaging bill. But what this one is really horrible because it does away with right-to-work laws. It does away with a lot of the secret elections. You know, it would hurt workers far more than it would help them, and it would really almost destroy the economy in states like Texas that are successful because they have right-to-work laws.
Can you quickly tell our listeners, actually, I'm a labor lawyer by background, but I defended businesses in labor disputes and labor litigation, but right-to-work laws essentially say,
Well, they basically say that you have the right to work whether you're a member of the union or not. You know, you're not forced to join a union. But having said that, if you look at unions in Texas, they're thriving. Look at the General Motors plant. Look at DFW Airport. Look at some of these large manufacturing facilities. They're all unionized.
Yep.
And those unions are doing great. They don't need this. But unions nationally are dying. They now represent a very tiny portion of the workforce, and they're trying to revive the unions because that's been a staple of the Democratic Party.
It most certainly has in donations. I remember doing at one point a litany of describing the campaign donations from teachers' unions to every kind of union. They're heavy donors of the Democrat Party, and that kind of collectivist mindset of unions goes with left-wing thinking versus the Republican, conservative, the right of the individual to decide whether he or she wants to join a union and how they want to function.
In fact, part of this PRO Act that they passed would be a card check. They wouldn't even be required to hold an election to start a union. It's crazy stuff, and it will go nowhere in the Senate.
We'll go nowhere in the Senate, but I do wish more Americans, I think the left has gotten away with signaling that because we stand for unions, that people should think, oh, we stand for workers. It's two different things.
Absolutely.
Unions are an entity, they're powerful, they control the members of their unions. And it is not, if you stand up for unions, you're not really standing up for the individual guy.
The people that really support and represent workers in America is President Donald Trump and the Republican Party. He's the one, we are the ones that are creating the jobs. And we're the ones that are expanding prosperity in the country. And it's affecting more than any group, those at the bottom.
Yep. We make this point many times. We're going to make it again throughout this year. Is that the improvement in the economy coming from President Trump's policies and taxes and pro-business is helping the little guy.
Right.
Yeah. In fact, I saw Star Parker had a column out talking about how actually under President Trump the black family has thrived, has
absolutely
increased more so than their white counterparts.
Right.
Really have been blessed by the policies.
You look at all the minority groups; they're rising quicker than any majority group in the country.
Okay, love that. And so you voted no, but it passed the House.
Right.
It shall go to die in the Senate.
It will.
Yeah, and then it's just a bill to send a message.
Well, the other thing is this, and this is something that everybody needs to understand. What the Democrats have been doing in the House since the beginning of the 116th Congress is creating political weapons. They have passed a lot of bills, some of them just reauthorization of bipartisan legislation that has always been bipartisan, putting poison pills in it, knowing that Republicans will vote no, so they can use it against them. Who in their right mind would vote against the Violence Against Women Act? Well, nobody would. And it's always renewed every 5 years on a bipartisan basis. This time, they decided to let it lapse so they could rewrite it. They put a bunch of poison pills in it. Republicans voted against it. And you watch in November, they'll accuse us.
It'll be a campaign theme.
Absolutely. And they've been doing that. The bill today on the ERA, same thing. It's a wedge issue. For all their talk of unifying the country, no one divides the country like Democrats do.
Amen to that. No argument here. Okay, I want to hit one other quick bill. I just thought this was a great thing that you did. This was H.R. 2817, the Child Custody Protection Act. It was a bill that you proposed. Do you want to describe essentially what it involved?
Well, essentially, right now, a person can, if they want to skirt a state law requiring parental notification of a minor's abortion, they can put that kid in a car, take it across state lines where the other state does not have that law, so the kid can get an abortion. My bill would prevent that. It would say, no, you can't do that. You cannot take a minor across state lines against their parents' wishes to get an abortion.
Okay, so it criminalized the crossing of state lines. be honest to say, I think that this is another example where the Democrats, they contort the message so much. What your bill is doing and what Texas law, I assume Texas has a law that says you have to have parental consent for abortion. You're really you're reinforcing the role of the family and the right of the parent to make decisions with their daughter.
And on the abortion issue, it's not what it used to be. It's not even what it was 10 years ago. They have so radicalized the issue in Washington, and I think most Americans don't see this. I also have a Tele-Abortion Prevention Act that basically, right now, what they're pushing, what they're promoting, the radical abortion groups, is they'll send you some drugs. You pick up your cell phone or your computer, you get somebody on the other line, and they'll talk you through taking these drugs so you'll self-abort. And it is it's a big health issue. They're not in a medical facility. There's no medical personnel around, okay? Sometimes it doesn't work and the baby's born alive, but it still winds up in the dumpster. But the real issue is this is a woman's health issue. And it kind of gives the lie to the left's argument that this has always been about women's health. It's not. And they're allowed to do this under current law, and the Tele-Abortion Prevention Act will stop that.
So that is a bill pending right now?
It's pending right now. Most people have never even heard the word teleabortion.
I hadn't either.
It's huge, and it's growing throughout the United States.
Okay, so it must be early stage pregnancies.
Oh, no, ma'am. Any stage pregnancy.
They will send you a pill, and you take a pill. The abortion occurs at your home by yourself.
You will deliver a stillborn child. The problem is it doesn't always work. But that baby will still wind up in a dumpster somewhere.
Yeah.
But it's a women's health issue. Women, if they're really concerned about health related to abortion, there should be an outcry against that practice, and yet it's growing in the United States. It's a human trafficker's dream come true.
Oh, that's another great point. If they have people they're trafficking and get pregnant, they just say, here's what you do.
Yep.
Oh, my gosh. Okay. Well, I noticed you got an award from the Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life
Very
people.
proud of that.
Got an A+ or whatever, an A rating, which I love. They're a fabulous organization.
Oh, they are. They're one of the best in the country.
Yeah. Okay, I want to turn and talk about the healthcare issues that face us. And there was okay, here's my problem. I have more issues than time. This is my problem talking to you, but I think I want to go to the healthcare thing.
Sure.
I saw this article that was kind of making the contrast that in America, you have leftists, the people running for president on the Democrat side, all in one form or another, pushing for Medicare for all, or I think you have Pete Buttigieg is saying, baby steps along the way, but we'll get there eventually. But it's basically everyone's in favor of taking over the healthcare system, federal control of the healthcare system, Medicare for all. There's an interesting article that was pointing out that in America, the left is clamoring for what the Canadian people are trying to get rid of. You have Canadians trying to find a way to reintroduce an effective private health insurance market and care, and they have to fight their own government to get it. But you had a personal situation involving you. You were diagnosed with cancer in July of last year, I think? July?
Yeah, in 2018.
2018, okay. And so you had I believe at one point I was reading about you had a recognition that if some of the things the left was pushing relating to taking control of the healthcare system, it may have prevented you from getting the care you needed. Can you describe that?
It absolutely would have. There have been so many dramatic advances in medicines across the board, but particularly when it comes to cancer, and breast cancer, pancreatic cancer, lung cancer, the big killers. Mm-hmm. And one of those is immunotherapy, and it's fairly new. And the immunotherapy I was on was Keytruda. It was developed for melanoma, worked extremely well there. And we're talking about late stage cancer, stage 4 cancer, and people living years or even curing it. And it takes years to develop these kinds of drugs.
Yeah.
And a lot of money. And this was all done by Merck. It wasn't done by the federal government.
Merck, the private pharmaceutical company.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And so the investment is enormous. And what the Nancy Pelosi bill did, and mind you, there was a bipartisan drug bill going through Energy and Commerce Committee. And she basically stopped that and submitted her own drug bill that would be a government control drug bill that would have the effect of stifling research and development. It would cost the different cancer groups said that it would cost like 8 cures a year. I mean, there's all kinds of statistics out there.
I'm sorry, 8 cures a year?
A year.
Okay.
Would stop. The research and development would stop. They wouldn't be introduced because the government control aspect of this is so onerous, they wouldn't be able to afford the research and development it takes to develop these new cures. It's insane. Do we need to do something about drug pricing? Absolutely. And the Republican plan, the Republican alternative, would do that without imposing all of these controls. And see, if you're a drug company, and you refused the price controls of the federal government, they would tax you 95%. This isn't about health care. It's not about lowering the price of drugs. It's about control. It's about socialized medicine, and they're not going to stop until they see it. Even though it has failed every place else in the world, socialism always sounds great until you actually try it, and it always fails.
Yes. I mentioned for our listeners that there was an article I made an allusion to a moment ago. It was just talking about in Canada how there are people who are trapped in the Canadian socialized medical healthcare system. They want more freedom for healthcare. They're pushing for U.S.-style private insurance. And yet what leftists do, from every Democrat presidential candidate and most of them in Washington, and I could not agree more with your point, they're not about caring for people. They're about getting control of the healthcare system by the federal government. But I urge you to read this article. If you go to our website, americacanwetalk.org, on the homepage, under shows, drop down, list of links, you'll see an article I linked that talks about how in Canada, the people who are stuck under the kind of system Nancy Pelosi is trying to push are trying to create a system like we already have here. And there's so many false promises by socialists, including the ones pushing socialized medicine, that somehow all of the access we have, all the abundance, all of the range of available care will still be there, and somehow it'll all be free. And this is, I'll go back to you then, because now you've been dealing with this cancer diagnosis and getting treatment. This is personal to you.
So, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, people will die if this drug bill of Nancy Pelosi's were to become law. I was told when I was diagnosed that the average life expectancy was 16 to 19 months. I surpassed that in December.
I'm so glad.
I'm still
here. You look
here.
great, actually.
I feel great. I'm working hard, and don't plan to stop. I'm running again. No reason not to, but it's because of the grace of Almighty God and modern biotechnology, and we can't stop. We can't stop this. We can't slow it down. Too many lives are at stake.
Wow, that is such a powerful personal testimony. I hope sometime, have you given this on the floor of the House?
I have. Okay. Mine was the response to the drug bill the day it passed on the floor.
Okay. I find that incredible. And I just find incredible when you hear stories like that, or other stories. I wrote about them in my book, too, about people in England, people in Canada, people who have wealth and can afford to come to America to pay the best doctors will always come here.
Oh, absolutely.
And yet we're surrendering our system to make it more like the systems that people flee from if they can.
If you go to MD Anderson Hospital, which is probably the premier hospital for cancer in the country, and I've been down there, you will see patients from all over the world.
Yeah.
This is where they come to get good treatment.
Oh boy. So we have been speaking today with Congressman Ron Wright. He's Texas CD 6, Congressional District 6. I'm so glad you happened to be in town this week. This worked out great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thanks for coming in
Absolutely.
the studio. Great to see you. Okay, folks, I do want to urge you to go to his website. You could, if you just Google his name, Congressman Ron Wright, and I think we had up during the time he was talking, we had his Twitter handle. Actually, you can quick tell us again. It's at Rep Ron Wright.
At Rep Ron. At Rep Ron Wright. A lot of R's.
Yeah, but Wright is W-R-I-G-H-T. Just a great congressman, a great conservative. So grateful he could be here today.